Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest issue of Comic Gentlemen, the podcast where we use our decades of being giant nerds to discuss the most divisive issues in comic book world. I'm your host, Greg, joined by my co-host, Dave. How's it going, Dave?
Really well.
Really well. It's getting into... Well, I mean, we were supposed to film this in September, but then things went crazy.
Yep.
So we're filming in October. So right now, Marvel is doing their latest comic book event, which is Dark Ages, I believe.
Dark Ages. Yeah.
So I haven't touched it at all yet. Have you dipped in it all?
I've got a couple of issues in the mail. Haven't read them yet.
Yeah, so we kind of figured, hey, the next big Marvel crossover event is out, so this would be a great opportunity to kind of talk about how we feel about crossover events in general. Let's go through all the major Marvel ones and kind of give our thoughts on them, rank them, and all that stuff. So yeah, that's what we're here to do today. So we're doing a Marvel crossover event rank tier list thing like we've done in the past. A couple caveats. So trying to figure out what counted as a full-on event was so difficult. Like, I couldn't find anything on Marvel's website. I couldn't find, I ended up going Wikipedia and a whole different comic book review and all that stuff. They all had different lists.
Yeah.
There's some that were of course on there, like the classics, but then there's all these random little ones that some people what about Shadowland? What about this? And it's but it doesn't technically count and all this stuff. And it was so confusing. So I apologize if I'm missing any. I apologize if there's some on here that you wouldn't consider a big event, but we're gonna discuss them anyways. So
these were the main ones.
These were the main ones. I did the best I could with what I had, to be fair. But before we get into the details of each event, Dave, what are your thoughts on comic events in general?
Being a longtime comic book fan, goes back to some of the comic events I remember when they first started really rolling. The first one I remember reading was Secret Wars, the very first Secret Wars.
Oh, really?
And it was so groundbreaking because all the characters and all the villains, not all of them technically, but most of them were in this event. And the event, in that particular case, I remember reading at the same time the Spider-Man issues, and they did, a couple Spider-Man issues of, Web of Spider-Man, Spectacular Spider-Man, and Spider-Man wasn't in them because he was gone. He was off world in the Secret Wars. So the fact that it had, that kind of a tie-in, it wasn't just Spider-Man went off and did this, but they kept doing, the Spider-Man comic as if he'd never left, that they actually tied it in, even though it was very loose, not like they do now, was I would almost say groundbreaking in a way, and it just kind of started building up from there. Personally now, I feel like every time I turn around, there's a comic book event,
100%.
and whether it's a single character or a particular line of books like the X-Men, or a Marvel Universe, collaborative where everybody's in it. There's always something coming. Sometimes there's even more than one going on at the same time. So it's the market is certainly doused with these now, and I feel like whereas before they certainly landed really well. Now I think with just the frequency of which they are, you get some really good ones and some not so great ones.
Yeah, I think for me, comic book events, because when I first started reading comics, that's when Civil War was out, and that's kind of and we'll get into more details on that, but it was always supposed to be this huge, groundbreaking, the universe is going to get completely changed, flipped on its head type of event. That's how they were marketed as, and that's why everybody started reading them so much, because it was whoa, this is changing the whole Marvel universe, who's going to die, who's going to turn evil, who's going to turn good, and all this stuff. But then, like you said, just over the years, there's 2 a year, 3 a year, something like that. It's when you have so many that are supposed to be universe changing, then none of them are universe changing, because either the universe changes too much or it doesn't change enough to warrant it. And it's just I'm definitely
it was now just a good story that probably could have landed in those comics as an arc.
100%. And I feel that's another thing that, and then we'll definitely it's another thing that we'll talk about is everybody has to have a crossover issue, so you feel the need to read all of them or collect all of them, but then 90% of them don't actually matter.
No.
I remember reading a couple of them. I'm oh yeah, Fear Itself, Ghost Rider. What's going to happen in there? I wonder how it's going to impact Fear Itself. And then it has nothing to do with anything, and it's just one of the things. So when you hear comic event, are you one of those guys who's I got to read and collect every single one of the event, or what?
Used to be.
Used to be.
I did that with the AVX. I did that with the Civil War, House of M, like some of the they're not so much older, but I mean they're older compared to the ones that are out now.
Yep.
Nowadays, not so much. Like in fact, and we'll get into this a little bit. Some of them I probably if I really would have been thinking about it, I probably wouldn't have even bought them.
Yep.
I don't even know if I would have read them.
Yeah.
Because again, it's just so saturated in what they do now.
Yeah.
You know, and what annoys me more than anything is this now cross promotion that they do within Marvel, where, okay, there's a, you know, for instance, Black Widow came out. Well, just before Black Widow came out, the movie, Taskmaster suddenly gets his own comic.
Yeah.
Like, and I hate that shit. I hate it. I hate it because you're not actually trying to create something that's enjoyable and, you know, something that you look back on and say, hey, this is a fantastic run. This was an amazing, this is a benchmark in this character. You're just literally, you know, throwing stuff out there just because, hey, somebody's going to see the Black Widow movie, and then they're going to go, oh, hey, there's this Taskmaster comic, I'm going to pick that up. Mm-hmm. And, you know, in all honesty, a lot of them are garbage.
Yeah. It's just a promo piece.
Yeah, so yeah. I mean, I don't collect all of them anymore.
Yeah, no. I've never been a collectionist. I'm always like I'm just going to read either the characters I like, or I'll read the main storyline. So, like, in my opinion, you know, because they always do this where, like, there's the main comic storyline for the event, and then they have all the branching comics. And, like, it drives me nuts when there's important story beats in the side comics that's not in the main comic.
Yeah.
Because in my opinion, the whole point of that main comic is to have all the important stuff.
Yes.
But then there's been, like, in my opinion, the worst crossover events are the ones where it's like all this random shit, so you have to collect all of them. Or you have no, and it drives me, like, I hate that. And to me, that's like a huge minus where it's like, why can't I just read the main part and be happy, you know? And I feel like those are the ones that are the best, are the ones where it's like the main story's in this, and then the extra ones are just, you know, they're interesting, but they're there just to be supplemental as opposed to, like, you know, important story beats and whatnot. So so that'll definitely influence it. So yeah, so let's get into some more details. The way I have this structured is we kind of went it year by year. So obviously the first one we're going to talk about is Secret Wars. Oh, sorry, before I get to that, so the way I kind of have the tier list structured, up at the top is classics, like everybody who's not, even people who are just getting into comics, like they should read this in my opinion. Like it's a good solid story, go check it out. I got just below that a good read, like maybe not everybody will love it, but most people will. Like it's a good solid read. Below that I have a good idea, bad execution. It kind of speaks for itself. Like if they had just tweaked a couple different things, it would have been great. Then below that it's just okay. Like you really don't need to read it. It's just kind of there. Like if you have time and you're bored, why not? And then the last one, of course, is Forget They Exist as our usual one. So yeah, let's start with Secret Wars 1980 came out. Secret Wars, I don't know this. Did DC's Crisis on Infinite Worlds come out first, or did Secret Wars come out
can't remember which. I know they both came out like relatively in the same time period, but I honestly can't remember which one came out first. At that point, I didn't even touch DC Comics, let alone read them. So I vividly remember the Secret Wars coming out.
Yeah. So Secret Wars, pivotal. You had all the heroes, like Dave said, most of the heroes, most of the villains, they get taken away from Earth by the Beyonder, puts them on a random planet, and we're like, hey, you guys fight, I'll watch, you know, type of thing. Hijinks ensue. Spider-Man gets his freaking black suit, symbiote suit. Like it's all this stuff. The Hulk lifts a mountain, which was one of my craziest. Like, holy, the Hulk's is doing this. Like, there's so many iconic. In my opinion, is there any reason why this wouldn't be a classic? No.
I think only in the way that you might look at it and say, this is like the writing maybe doesn't hit the same par of some of the writing that you see nowadays. In the sense that it's just not as maybe as developed. somebody might be able to make an argument for that, but that's true of all things.
Yeah.
I mean, as time goes on, things get better, or should. I think it's a classic. It's 100% a classic.
Like, I mean, it was early-ish 80s, 1984. So it's one of those things where it's like it's right before the dark grittiness of comics kind of took hold, right? So this is definitely one of those like still a little bit ha 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 ha.
Yeah, the way I described it is it was when it was still in the period where superheroes were superheroes.
Yeah.
When you thought of a superhero, that's what a superhero was. Mm-hmm. Not the, vigilante kind of, like the stuff that you get nowadays, the dark, the gritty, the realistic. It was very much superheroes were superheroes, and villains were villains.
Mm-hmm. Whoops, I clicked the wrong thing. Yeah, and I think, like I said, it's hard not to think of it as a classic, because it was groundbreaking at the time, right?
Yes.
Like, it's one of those things where it's like, nothing like this had been done before, all that fun stuff.
Well, and if you think about it, it kicked off what is probably going to be the last one that we cover in King in Black.
Yeah.
That wouldn't have happened if the events in Secret Wars wouldn't have happened.
That's true. Oh, that's crazy to think about. 40 years.
Yeah.
40 years in the making. Oh my God. We've been on this planet for too long.
Yes.
So, yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things where it's like, I feel like anybody who says they're a comic book fan should check out Secret Wars at one point. Like, I didn't read Secret Wars until like maybe like 5 years ago type of thing, but even I was like, even if it's a little bit cheesy 80s, hey, that's good sometimes. You sometimes need that cheesy 80s.
No, it's good. It's good to go back and remember what the characters were like.
Yeah.
Back in that age. And like I said, the iconic, being a super, Spider-Man fan, the iconic black suit being introduced at that point, the new Spider-Woman, the fact that for some reason, and I can't remember exactly what the issue was, but Titania develops this like absolute like paranoid fear of Spider-Man and doesn't want to go anywhere near him.
Yeah.
It was just like there were a lot of events. The Hulk thing, I remember seeing a cover when it first came out, and it's just like the Hulk, basically shouldering this mountain on top of him, and all the other superheroes are kind of huddled underneath him. It was just great.
Yeah, it was a good time.
Great.
Yeah, and it's funny how things from this comic. So this is one thing, because I mean I wasn't there when it first came out, right? Like, did they have a bunch of like they had the mainline issue, but then they have a lot of like spread out things? No,
there was nothing else. It was just if you went and read any comic at that time and that hero was in Secret Wars, there was one or two issues that I can think of. I know there was at least one in each of the Spider-Man titles, if not two, where Spider-Man just wasn't there. And I remember one of the issues, Black Cat's like out looking for him, like trying to find him, because then nobody knows what the hell is going on. Yeah. All these heroes just disappeared. Mm-hmm. So that's the closest it came to like actually having runoff or any kind of connection to the comics.
Yeah,
they made it realistic enough in the sense of like, no, they're gone, so they're not going to be in a couple issues.
That makes sense.
Which was great. Mm-hmm. And then the event was over, and then they were back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is really cool. I mean, that's not something they've done, in a long time, right? So it's just one of those things where, again, it's very much like the step one of these type of things. So, like I said, in my research, it was very unclear what counted as an event and what didn't. So, like, based on what I can tell, it kind of jumps from this all the way to House of M. So what do you think there's anything in between? Like, I mean, some people mentioned like Secret Wars 2, which people were like, it kind of sucks, so why do you talk about it?
It was really bad. We don't talk about it.
And then Infinity Saga was the other one people like to throw in as a possible.
Yeah, the Infinity Gauntlet the Infinity Gauntlet could have definitely been considered one. Like, I always looked at an event that, like, if it was a major event, it had to incorporate like more than just one title.
Yep.
And Infinity definitely involved everybody. You could, but to your point, it's often kind of thrown off to the side like it's not. Mm-hmm. I don't know why.
Yeah, it must have just been the way they structured it. Maybe it was just because, like I said, like, I mean, Secret Wars had its like own main title that was Secret Wars, and Infinity had that.
Yep.
Like, okay, so maybe it's just my fault for not including it. So where if you had to include off the top of your head, Infinity Gauntlet, how would you include Infinity? Like, is it worth reading?
I would say it's at least at the a good read, if not a classic.
Okay.
And again, I would be willing to put it in the classic area because again, it's that it's that that thing that spawned the movies, or the idea behind the movies, that then respawned. I don't know how many times we've now had to deal with the Infinity Stones in the last little while. All these offshoots of that original book, or sorry, set of books. Again, some iconic, like, I mean, he and killed off half the universe, and it was just. That was one of the things that really kind of stuck to me going in and seeing the movie versus reading the comic, because the comic's so much different.
Yeah.
And the reasons behind what he was doing are so much different. And the people involved and the people that were like the quote unquote the heroes at the end of the day, so much different. But again, it's I'd put it into that classic category just because of that. Just because it was the idea that spawned a lot of more modern ideas.
Mm-hmm. Which, I must have missed it. But I'll have to go back to read it. Like I said, kind of the next big one that came out then, that people consider like the next big crossover event is House of M, which came out in 2005.
Ugh.
Yeah, I know.
What?
I was surprised to find out, though, this is Brian Michael Bendis. So this must have been like pretty early in his... So like Ultimate Spider-Man came out, 2001? Something like that? He must have gone, skyrocketed pretty quick for them to give him a freaking... whole crossover event. Yeah. That's crazy.
And which was interesting, because it's House of M, and even though it's a universe involving event, it was really spawned out of really the X-Men and mutants, and Bendis at that point had never written any of the X-Men comics.
And they just said go ahead. He must have had like one heck of a pitch then.
Oh, yeah.
So basically the general idea of House of M is Scarlet Witch uses her power to create an alternate reality in which mutants win.
Yeah.
And like they're the number one race, and they control the planet, and then like a couple heroes, especially Wolverine, kind of realize we're trapped in an alternate reality, this isn't right, and then they kind of break free. And then the biggest thing to come out of House of M, which we'll get into eventually, is No More Mutants, which completely shattered. Because the thing building up to House of M, which is insane, is how strong mutants were becoming.
Yes.
Because like basically at this point you had like Grant Morrison X-Men and like all this build up of like there's mutants, like every other person is a mutant at this point.
Yeah,
like,
Genosha. It was expounding at a rate that was just like unlike any other time before as far as the mutants were concerned.
So then you have Brian Michael Bendis comes in with this idea of House of M, which is like let's just jump ahead and say mutants are number one, and like let's go from there. And it had some really cool ideas of like what does it mean to have a full mutant society? You have mutant police. You have like it's been a while since I read it, but it was like the Avengers were basically all mutants at this point, and like or working with the mutants. Like, but like what were your thoughts when you were reading it back in the day?
When I first read it, I loved it because other than the first like couple minutes of the comic, where you just kind of it sets the scene of like hey, they're gonna go deal with the Scarlet Witch, and of course this is just coming on the heels of Avengers Disassembled, right, where she was disassembling the Avengers and destroying them all, and they basically go to kind of deal with her because like hey, she's a threat, and then they come in the room and they're all kind of arguing about this whole thing, and then she sets this new world in motion, and then all of a sudden you're just shot out of a cannon because you wake up with Wolverine and he's going, where am I?
Yeah.
Because of his mutant healing factor, he can remember, he always wanted to remember who he was, and he wakes up and he's like, I know who I am and I know what things used to be like because he got his wish. And then it was just like out of a cannon after that point, because it's just like him running around trying to figure out what the hell's going on. Everybody's thinking, oh, you lost your mind, like we need to get him under control. And it was just like I felt like it was just especially at the very beginning, it was just like adrenaline inducing as far as a comic's concerned, because it was just go as Wolverine's trying to run around figuring out like what the hell is going on and how do I free all these people, because I see all these people living these different lives and this isn't the way that they should be. I thought it was well written. The art was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. And some of the spin-offs that they did, like the Amazing Spider-Man one, was fantastic. Great art, great writing. It was just a great story. And there were a lot of those where there were like these break-offs where they did like these little tiny mini-series, maybe like 3 issues or 5 issues, that were just great. And even some of the tie-in issues, even to your point where it wasn't absolutely mandatory to read that, it had enough of the flavor of House of M to kind of go, okay, oh, this is what their lives would be like
if mutants,
this was the reality.
Yeah. So I would put it as a classic. Like I think
100%.
Classic. I think, and it's interesting because like the main change that came out of it was no more mutants. But like because
and the resurrection of Hawkeye.
Oh yeah, sorry, you're correct. But it's one of those things where it's like because of where the mutants were at that point in time in the comics, that was so pivotal.
Oh yeah,
because it was like mutants were everywhere.
Well, reset it back to like the 80s and 90s as far as how many mutants were kicking around.
Like it's insane how I mean, it took until Hickman, like I guess a little bit before it was Avengers vs. X-Men when they started to fix the problem, right?
Yeah.
Which was like 20 years later, or no, 10 years later, but still, it took so long to redo what House of M did. And I mean, there's so many storylines that came out of that. You had, oh man, what's it called? Where they were trying to get Hope. Messiah Complex.
Oh, yes.
Messiah Complex. You had X-Force with Rick Remender was amazing. Like, he has so many crazy things. Schism, which was an interesting thing.
Yeah.
So then, you had this crazy thing. And again, the other thing is, like, again, the time jump between Secret Wars and House of M.
Yeah.
So then you have House of M comes out, huge event. Then they go, okay, this is interesting. Let's try this again. Let's do this. Then you have Mark Millar doing Civil War in 2006.
Yes.
So if you don't know what Civil War is, I don't know where you've been all your life. So like Civil War is basically like, if you like, it's very similar to Captain America Civil War, which was we want to now start registering mutants, superheroes, because the government's basically like, you guys are running wild. There's no, if you guys do property damage or anything like that, there's no repercussions. The opening event in this story was the New Warriors start a TV show, and then they blow up an entire school. So that was crazy. And then you had this huge discussion about like, should superheroes register or should they still be allowed to be vigilantes, which is a whole, interesting topic in itself. And then you had the famous Iron Man on one side, Captain America on the other, and then which side are you on as a hero, and this crazy division between the superhero community. And I think that's really what made me super interested, is because like there's barely any villains in this story. Like almost none. Like almost every other thing we're going to talk about has like some major villain does something crazy and then they hit fight over, right? Civil War is literally just the heroes have a political, ideological difference, and now they just got to figure out who's right. And it's this thing. So like, give me your thoughts on Civil War.
I was very impressed because I thought a lot of by the conclusion, a lot of different things got spun out, and this is what I think defines a one of these miniseries. Like, it changed a lot of things. So from as little as from the New Warriors. What's his name? Speedball. Becomes Penance. And you've got Spider-Man outing himself. Right? Which sent his comic and his world upside down. You've got the death of Captain America by the end of it. You've got just the basically the entire breakup of the Avengers, because you've got Thor at this point is dead or not around. And Captain America and Iron Man are not seeing eye to eye. So from that point on, it just kind of grows and grows. And I don't think there were a lot of characters that were involved in this that didn't have some kind of repercussion come out in their comics later on, which was great.
I think that really is what stands Civil War apart from all the rest of the ones we're going to talk about, is this one impacted the most superheroes in comics in general. Like, this is one of the few ones where I did read almost every expansion on it. Like, Punisher War Journals was insane. Runaways had a huge crossover with Young Avengers and X-Men and all this stuff, and like, it literally was just like, you take each individual character in the Marvel Universe and just go like, which one would they decide? And like, it was just crazy.
When you take the Fantastic Four and you split them.
That's insane.
Like, you've got two on each side going, no, I agree, no, I disagree. I mean, it was as far as an event was concerned, it did what it was supposed to do, and there was so many iconic events, or so many iconic moments. Like when Spider-Man's getting hunted down and he gets basically rescued by the Punisher. how bizarre is that? You know, you've got you know, that small group living underground, and I could see, like, from both sides. Like, I would say I agreed with Tony Stark. Like, I agreed with where he was coming from in the registration. He's just being a dick about it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, and I agreed with Captain America and that side in that they shouldn't register. And because, like, how would that change just superhero culture altogether? Because you're now just essentially a vetted government person.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
And I thought it was really smart at the time to have it be Iron Man and Captain America, because not only are they both really big time Avengers, it's the fact that the world knew both their identities.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where it's like, if it had been like Spider-Man instead of Captain America, then you go, well, of course Spider-Man doesn't want anybody to know who he is because nobody knows who he is, right? But then to have Captain America, who everybody knows who Captain America is, to go like, no, I agree with the side that is saying no, just made it so much more of an interesting argument, right? And like, and 100%, of course, Tony's always a dick, you know, type of thing. So it's just one of those things.
Well, and if you think about it, like, from both perspectives, like, really, if somebody really wouldn't have been thinking when they wrote this, they would have said Captain America would have been on the registration side, because he's usually towing the line of the government and S.H.I.E.L.D. and everything else. And Tony Stark was always like the rule breaking. Hey, don't shackle me with your rules. Mm-hmm. I need to have, you know, free thinking to go. But they reverse sides, which also at the same time did make sense, because you understood where Captain America was coming from and why he was defending who he was defending, and you understood why Tony Stark was doing what he was doing. Was because really it was just all about control and power. Mm-hmm. And it was such a good series. The art by McNiven was fantastic. Mm-hmm. Really, really great series.
So yeah, anybody who's out there, you got to read Civil War 1. Like, it's so good. It's like, I mean, they made a movie out of it. I mean, we've joked about this before, where it's like you have the battle in Civil War, the comic books, which is like 50 heroes versus 50 heroes, even more than that, and then you have the movie, which is like 6v6, and it's like completely different scale.
Running at each other from
across. So if you like Captain America Civil War, you gotta read the comics, because you'll realize why we prefer the comic over that. So then the next one, Marvel's hitting it out of the box at this point. You had House of M, you had Civil War. Mm-hmm. The next one they have coming up, and again, I'm not sure if this one would count. I have World War Hulk in 2007. Mm-hmm. So this comes off the heels. This is Greg Pak's run on Hulk, which at the time was like, before Immortal Hulk came out, I thought this was the best Hulk run of all time, which is Greg Pak. And it comes off the heels of Planet Hulk, which I think is one of my favorite comic book stories of all time. Yeah. Like, I love that storyline so much. And so then you have World War Hulk. So basically what happened in Planet Hulk was all the Illuminati took the Hulk and were like, you're a problem, man. We're going to shoot you into space. You're going to hang out on a planet and you just do whatever you want. Then he accidentally ends up on Sakaar, which is like a war planet, and then he just takes over the whole planet. You have this amazing storyline of Hulk going from a gladiator to a rebel to like a world leader and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. So then what happens is Hulk thinks that the Illuminati murders his entire family. Like, he had a wife who was pregnant, and then they're all dead. And he's like, this is bullshit. I thought you guys were leaving me alone. I'm sick of this. And so Planet Breaker Hulk then goes, I'm coming back to Earth, motherfuckers. Yeah. And like comes back to Earth. The first thing he does is find Black Bolt on the moon and beats the living shit out of him.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it was so good. Then you have this crazy like.
That was one of the best lines I've ever written, that I've ever read. The art by John Romita Jr. is fantastic. But just the fact that like Black Bolt just lets loose with his full voice and just blasts the Hulk, and the Hulk, you know, the Hulk kind of just comes through it and just grabs him, and he's like, I didn't come here to hear you to hear you whisper. And I was like, oh my god. And it was like the entire series was just the Hulk beating people up.
Yeah, that's all it was.
Yeah.
Like, I think to me, that's its biggest downside, is that you had Planet Hulk, which was like this huge like character progression for the Hulk, and he evolved so much, to then just come to Earth and the entire storyline is just, who's next?
Yeah,
and I beat you
up, on to the next guy,
and that's it. And like, I mean, the ending was interesting in the idea of it was his friends that betrayed him. Like, it was Meek that was actually the one that blew up his planet, because Meek was so blood boil, like, I just want to keep doing war. Like, it was a very like parallel to Julius Caesar and all this stuff type of thing. was interesting. But I feel like when you compare it to Civil War and you compare it to House of M, that's like the biggest like letdown of the series, which is how kind of it doesn't have a lot of impact. My only favorite sub story from it was Ghost Rider fights the Hulk at one point, and Ghost Rider should have won, but then there's an amazing line where he almost beats the Hulk but then walks away, and the other hero's like, where's he going? And then somebody says, oh, it's because Hulk's the innocent one, so that's why Ghost Rider doesn't beat him, because he defends the innocent type of thing. And so all the Illuminati are just like, oh yeah, we're the dicks. Like that was so good. It had nothing to do with Ghost Rider. Ghost Rider literally just walked away. But you know, like it was a good line, right? So I enjoyed that. But yeah, it definitely lacked a little bit when it came to the impact. Also, this was like during the era where they were trying to make Sentry a thing.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know why. They just keep trying to make Sentry a thing, and nobody likes Sentry. Stop trying to make Sentry a thing.
Yeah, that was probably one of the more disappointing parts of it, was the fact that it was, ultimately came down to him and the Sentry fighting it out. And I wish they would have gone in a different direction.
Yeah.
Like just brought the whole Marvel universe on him and just had a big battle royal between him, and eventually they figure out how to take him down. But I wasn't impressed with that. But leading up to it, like just the fact was like, okay, we're going to take an angry Hulk with a warband, and then he's just hunting down the Illuminati and beating everybody up. Yeah, was just great.
It was a good time. It was just fantastic. Yeah, and like you said, John Romita Jr. art was always a good time. Yeah. So, but how would you rank it?
I put it in the good category.
Yeah, I would too,
because I thought it was a good read. It just wasn't as earth-shattering as the other ones. Yeah. But it was just a solid read.
Like if you're here for a good time, it's definitely a good time. I don't think it's groundbreaking, but it's a good time. So now you have the next one that comes out. Brian Michael Bendis is back on it again, because at this point Brian Michael Bendis is literally just
writing everything.
Everything. He writes everything. Like, it's insane. And now you have Secret Invasion. Right. So Secret Invasion is crazy. Basically what you start finding out is that the Skrull invaded Earth, but not only invaded Earth, but they started replacing superheroes. So I think the main one that started it all off was the New Avengers or Secret Avengers. I can't remember which one. New Avengers fight Elektra, who was the leader of the Hand at the time, but then they beat her, and then she's a Skrull. Yes. And they go like, what's happening? What's going on? And then they kind of goes from there. It's like, give me a breakdown of Secret Invasion.
Oh, I really liked this one. Yeah. Again, I liked where it ended up, because again, at the end of Secret Invasion, it shifted everything again. Yeah. It was kind of coming at that point where the Mighty Avengers, which was led by Iron Man, and the kind of ragtag group of New Avengers that was led by Bucky Barnes as Captain America, were the ones that were coming, we're kind of coming into a crash course of getting back together again in a way, because of this
unifying threat,
this thing going on. Yeah. The surprise of throughout all the comics of who was a Skrull. Yeah. And then them going back and retconning how they got taken or at what point they got taken, I thought was really kind of creative and kind of cool. The fact that at the end it was her all in the end there with the Spider-Woman. The original Spider-Woman. But I just loved the art. I thought Leinil did a fantastic job. The story was good. One of my favorite parts is right towards the end where the Trinity, the three get back together, even though it's not Steve Rogers Captain America, it's Captain America, Thor, and Iron Man get back together, to finish taking down the threat. Yeah. And then the big surprise at the end, spoilers, is the fact that the hero is Norman Osborn at the end. Norman Osborn! Which then starts Dark Reign moving forward. And it was like, oh my god. How could you go from this is already bad. Holy cow, they infiltrated. Okay, we're just barely scraping by here. We're just going to pull out the win. And the guy that pulls out the win is Norman Osborn, and then just leverages the shit out of that to take over everything.
Like, I think it definitely had the same hints of Civil War, which is basically like you take every character and instead of like pro-registration, anti-registration, it's are you a Skrull or not a Skrull? And you just got to go through each character. Like Giant Man was a Skrull, I'm pretty sure, and like all this stuff. So that it was really cool. And then in my opinion though, I think if you didn't have Dark Reign after it, like that ending, I think it would have been a little bit more lackluster, like overall. But having that ending of Norman Osborn being the hero, with like just him holding the gun, was so good. It was just like yes, and then you had the whole Dark Reign situation we'll get into next, and like Siege and all that stuff. So I definitely agree. I think the ending was definitely the best part. So how do you rank? Do you think classic or good read?
I didn't call it a classic.
Okay.
I did. I said it was a good read. It was solid. I enjoyed the story. The art was fantastic. A lot of the side stuff that was going on in the other comics or the miniseries, I just found were there. You know, all of them had, my best friend's a Skrull, or you know, my partner's a Skrull, or whatever. But at the end of the day, it just a lot of those extras just seemed pointless.
Yeah, a little bit.
You know, and not to take away from the main story. The main story was great, but to your point, like if it would have just been like, oh, Captain America, takes out the bad guy, and then they just moved on, it would have certainly lost some steam. The fact that it left on such a cliffhanger of like, oh no, crazy ass Norman Osborn is now in charge of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
That was what really pushed it over the edge. So it's hard to rate in Secret Invasion and then the Dark Reign period followed by Siege separately without because it almost feels like they're just one long continuous story.
Yeah.
But still a good read.
It's a good read, yeah. And I mean Bendis. I mean I'll always push for Bendis. Yeah. I love Bendis. So
it was another solid outing for him.
Yeah, so next one, like we were kind of hinting at, is so after Secret Invasion, Norman Osborn is seen on TV killing the Skrull, so everybody's like, whoa, he's the hero now. Like, so he's in charge. You have Dark Reign, which is basically all the superheroes get replaced with villains.
Yes.
Like, you had that crazy...
Dark Avengers.
Dark Avengers is insane. You had Daken as Wolverine. Yeah. You had Venom Scorpion as Spider-Man. Yeah. You had all these, like, crazy villains. It was like, who's in charge here? Like,
and Norman Osborn wearing an Iron Man suit.
Iron Patriot.
As Iron Patriot. Like,
and it was just like, oh my gosh, like it's the darkest timeline. Like this is insane. And so you had that going on for like a solid year of just like, man, this is just topsy-turvy craziness. Then you had Siege. So basically what happened in Siege is Asgard is floating over... I can't remember what state. I think it's like Ohio.
It's in Oklahoma.
Yeah, Oklahoma. So it's floating over Oklahoma. They kind of like integrated Asgard with America a little bit, at least. It's one of those like, it's an allegory for, immigration and refugee status and all that stuff. So basically Norman Osborn is like kind of at this point losing it.
Yeah. Like he wasn't before.
Yeah, I mean, he was always crazy, but now it's the point where people are starting to realize he's crazy again. And it's like, what's happening? So he kind of goes like, well, the Asgardians are evil. I'm going to go take care of it. So then he sets up a siege of Asgard and starts going in there. So what, you know what? Siege is interesting. I feel like it had so much potential.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of faltered in my opinion. Like I didn't feel like there was like the cool scenes that stick out on my head is Iron Man, doing the forging. I think was that Siege? Or was that a different one? I mean, he does it a lot.
Yeah.
But, sorry, there's a lot of ones. I think this is the first time where he goes to like an Asgardian forge and makes like Asgardian weapons or something like that.
Yeah. He was the big events were Ares getting torn in half by because at this point I think Marvel kind of went, okay, Sentry's not taking off like we thought we were, so we'll just make him a super evil weird bad guy.
Yeah, I forgot about this actually.
So he takes Ares and tears him in half, and I think it was like the third episode or third issue. It was like insane. The fact that Norman Osborn takes Captain America's shield to the face was like one of the most iconic show-ups of all time. Yeah. The fact that they go off into the desert and they're like, no, we need him. We need some help. We need him. And they show up and who are they talking about? But the Hulk. Yeah. And it's Captain America and the Hulk, who's dumb Hulk at that point, is basically like, me help Captain America. And then he shows up. It was just, again, it was set up. It was set up nicely. They could have done more with it. it kind of reminded me a little bit of like World War Hulk in the sense of like it was just a big beatdown, like it's just a big fight, a culmination of the whole Dark Reign kind of leading up to like, okay, something's gotta break, and this was the breaking point of it, which was basically, you know, Sentry getting, you know, finally
dealt with,
dismissed and dealt with.
Yeah.
Norman Osborn completely going batty.
Yeah.
And his whole thing falling apart with Hammer and it just all crumbles, which then led into, I think it was the Age of Heroes or something
Heroic
like that.
Age.
The Heroic Age. It was again art spectacular because it was Coppola. The writing was decent. It was only 4 issues, but again, it was coming on the heels of like the whole Dark Reign thing.
Yeah.
So
you could, I mean, everybody knew eventually the heroes were going to get back in power.
Yeah.
I think that's the issue with this is like there wasn't anything super special about it. It
No.
was like we all knew it was coming.
Yeah.
And like Dark Reign was super cool. We all loved it, but I mean it had to end at some point, and like it was kind of just like it's a fight, you know, and it's just the way it's gonna be, right? So like I would put it as good idea, bad execution, but what would you put it as?
I actually put it as a good read.
Oh really? Okay.
But it was mostly again because I'm kind of blending it all together. Like the invasion was good. You know, Dark Reign was good. This was just like the 4 issues that just kind of wrap the whole Norman Osborn takes over the world kind of thing. But I can see where you're coming from. I'd be willing to put it down a notch and say no. It was a good idea. Maybe could have been fleshed out a little better. It was just that bad execution because it felt like a poor man's World War Hulk. It was like a big beatdown. There were some cool moments,
but not nearly as many.
But there wasn't a lot of substance to it. So I'd say it's in that.
It is interesting though, now that we're talking about it, how Siege kind of reflected American politics, but like 10 years early, you know, type of thing. You have a crazy man in power who hates immigrants and like tries to murder them all, and everyone's like, what's happening? You know? So hopefully we're in a heroic age now, you know, type of thing, but we'll find out. But yeah, well, it's a good read / good idea, bad execution, so we'll put it there. So now we got into the era of comic book events. So now we've really established the idea of
we're just ramping them up.
Yeah, Marvel's literally like we're gonna have one a year at least. It's gonna build up. Although there was a bit of a break between. Was there something between Secret Invasion and Siege? I just noticed. It's just Dark Age. So or not Dark Age. Dark Reign. So now this is my opinion with Fear itself and After. It's kind of the dark ages of comic events where it's like most of them are kind of useless and pointless.
Yeah.
And not all of them had a lot of impact. So the first one that comes out is Fear Itself by Matt Fraction. Basically what happens is an old Asgardian god of fear shows up and just starts messing with the world, and like a bunch of incarnates of fear, you know, random heroes and villains get a super weapon and turn into things.
Yes.
And then they rampage.
Yes.
And that's all I remember of it. Like
it was bad.
Yeah, it wasn't great.
It was bad. And I find this, I'm sorry for any Thor fans out there, but I find this, me personally, anytime Asgard has a huge role to play in what's going on, I don't generally like the storyline. I didn't like Fear Itself. I was annoyed by it. It just, at the end of the day, there was a couple, you know, moments that were kind of like, oh, okay, that happened. Like when Captain America's arm, this is Bucky Barnes' arm, gets ripped off, and he's basically left for dead. And there were a couple moments. That's when Tony Stark went to Asgard and made a bunch of weapons.
It happens a lot.
But it was just like the premise essentially was just like you broke down. It was like, oh, hey, here's an old Asgardian god that gets out and everybody's scared of him. And he makes a bunch of people bad guys, and then they rampage, and then everybody stops them.
Yeah, like I don't even remember how they beat him at the end. Like I don't remember anything about this. Like the only thing that sticks out in my head of Fear Itself was Juggernaut's got super powered.
Yeah.
But the only reason that was funny is because Deadpool was the one that was dealing with him, and then you had the guy who wrote Dr. McNinja write as Deadpool, and it was so funny, and that was the only thing that like. I was interested at all in Fear Itself. Other than that, I was like, this is such a waste of time.
Yeah.
And again, it really feels like Marvel was like, we need an event. Yeah. You know, we got to have one.
And I'm sure if I looked, I can't remember exactly when, but that might have culminated with a Thor movie coming out, or it might have been, you know, like, and again, that's where these things started coming out in in
tandem.
In tandem with the movies coming out or whoever they were pushing, and that's where I feel like a lot of these lost their importance or even their good writing because somebody just said no, like you got to do this, and then that's what they came up with. And Fear Itself was just bad. I put that in Forgot It Happened.
Forgot It Happened.
That's where I put it. I was like, you can't even fix this thing.
No, really. Like, I don't even know if anything came out of it, like any big change or anything like that came out of it. It was really, it just happened. And I feel bad for Matt Fraction because I feel like at that time he was the next up and coming writer, and then he has this, and it's like, oh, you got your chance, you're out of here, type of thing. Whereas
it was not.
It sucks.
Just wasn't good.
So the next one you have, which did have a big build up, which is Avengers versus X-Men. So AVX, I this is one. I'll have to hear what you think about this because it's very interesting. So you had the X-Men for 10 years or almost 10 years at this point being the bottom of the barrel. They're hunted almost to extinction. Everybody's almost dead. They get to the point where even within their own ranks, they're now starting to have divisions. They have Cyclops versus Wolverine, Schism. Half people go with him, half the people go with him. Because they have, I thought Schism was interesting, which one day we'll do an X-Men storyline breakdown. I thought Schism was very interesting. Avengers versus X-Men. So then you had this point where X-Men are starting to come back. They have Messiah Complex. They have Summers. What's her name? Not Rose. Hope Summers. Hope Summers is now there. She's starting to make mutants come back. Then she gets infected by the Phoenix Force, which, I mean, if you're an X-Men fan, the Phoenix Force is everything. So it's just like one of those things. So, but then the Avengers hear about it and they're like, oh, what's happening?
Yeah, we don't like this.
We don't like this because, Phoenix Force always causes problem, which isn't wrong. Even Wolverine agreed because he's a part of the Avengers at this point. He agrees the Phoenix Force causes problems. So you have the Phoenix Force arrive. And then, basically it's a storyline of the Avengers want to stop the Phoenix Force because they were worried about it. The X-Men want the Phoenix Force because there's a chance it'll save mutantdom or something like that. And then hijinks ensue. I was surprised to find out how many people wrote this. You had Brian Michael Bendis, Matt Fraction, Jason Aaron, Ed Brubaker, and Jonathan Hickman all working on this. So you literally have like the top...
because it was 13 issues.
It was long.
It was ridiculously long.
Yeah.
Art was great because they split it, I think, between 2 or 3 artists at least. I liked it. I just found, I liked aspects of it. I liked the fact that basically you start off and it's like the X-Men are just getting the boots laid to them, as far as the Avengers, trying to put the wraps on whatever the X-Men are trying to do. And then the Phoenix Force decides, okay, I'm going to inhabit 5 people instead of 1, and the people that it shows, like Cyclops, okay, I could kind of see why they went that direction, why he's the X-Men for the most part, but then you have Colossus, what a weird choice, but interesting. Okay, I'll take it. Magic.
Magic I can see. I can see.
The obviously
Emma
Frost.
Namor.
It was just, and it was interesting to see how each of them used the Phoenix Force, and then as the Phoenix Force started to each of them started getting beat, and then Cyclops just kept taking on their portion of the Phoenix Force, and then the consequences after he's been beaten, and now that led, at least in the X-Men series, that led to basically Cyclops, Magneto, and a bunch of X-Men are now just renegade freedom fighters running around after that. I liked it. It definitely, to me, wasn't a classic. Even though it should have been because of the level of how epic it was, it should have been. But I felt it was a good read. It was interesting. There was enough parts in it that I found intriguing and neat moments, and Namor taking, revenge on Wakanda, and just all these things. Yeah. But at the end of the day, other than going, hey, Cyclops, you're just not a good dude, we're going to lock you up, there really wasn't any consequence or life-changing events in it at all that I just really felt like it wasn't like Civil War.
No. I think the big things that came out of it was supposed to be the X-Men comeback because Hope does start bringing back mutants. That was a big thing that came out of it, and the fact that like that was supposed to be the big thing was that it was supposed to break the No More Mutants curse.
Yeah.
But the problem is they didn't ever do that fully.
No.
They just kind of did AVX and they were like, but we don't want to 100% commit at least until House of 10 Powers of X is when they finally commit, which was like 5 years later after this. Or even longer than that. Like, it was just insane.
Yeah.
Like, my biggest issues with AVX is Cyclops of it all. Like, if Cyclops hadn't been such a douche the entire time, it would have been such a more enjoyable comic. But to have him be, like, the main character... Like, he was douchier than Iron Man in Civil War, in my opinion. Like, he was, like, just... so everything he said was wrong.
Yeah, what I liked about them using him is I never really had, like, a serious issue with Cyclops. Like, Cyclops always, like, for some reason, people just have this hate thing for him.
I know.
You know? So it was like, oh, okay, you want to hate him? Here.
Here's the reason to hate him.
Here's the reason to really hate him. And even I was like, I come out of that and I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
What a dick.
I think that's that's the saddest part is that you should be cheering for the X-Men in this situation. Like, their entire species was decimated. They were hunted down almost extinction.
And he killed Professor X.
Yeah, screw Professor X. Again. Type of thing. And it's one of those things where it's like, it just feels like it should have been so much better than it was. And you have such a crazy team working on it. It was that. I think there were some cool points. Like, you had... This is when Storm broke up with Black Panther, which was huge, because they had that split. Yeah. You had Magneto fight Iron Man, which cracked me up, because, of course, Magneto just, like... you're really gonna come at me, bro? That type of thing.
Exactly.
Like, but then it just kind of... It felt like it was trying to be a mix of Civil War and House of M. Like, they were trying to be like... Those things were so popular and they're classic. Let's try to recreate them, and then just completely lost it. Right?
It just didn't land.
I would put it as good idea, bad execution, or like, would you even put it lower than that?
You know what? I originally had it as a good read.
Okay, really?
Yeah, because I enjoyed it. I just felt it was a little long. And I just didn't feel like it, like at the end, it like really created, kind of like the World War Hulk. It just didn't, like, nothing happened.
It just ended.
And you're like, oh, okay. Oh, now there's some new X-Men books. Okay.
Yeah.
But like, it just didn't, like, I felt the art was good. The writing was good. Like, I wasn't bored about it at all. The side stuff that was going on during AVX, like, again, it ran like 12 or 13 issues. I think in the actual comics, like the crossovers with the comics were like 4 or 5 issues. Like, it was just kind of felt like they built up to do this big thing that was going to be this big, huge event, and it just didn't pay off at the end.
Yeah.
That was the only problem I had, was like, it just didn't, other than like, oh my god, you killed Professor X, and wow, everybody hates Cyclops. You just really didn't get anything else out of it as far as I was concerned.
See, and this is why I would put it down a notch into good idea by execution, because there's so much potential you could have had into this.
Yeah,
like, imagine if this led into House of 10 Powers of X, or whatever the breakdown is of that. Like, imagine if that had been the lead up. That would have been insane. Of like, okay, there's actual payoff to this crazy story, right? But instead, like you said, it kind of just went back to mutants suck. And I think the other issue with this story is this was the era where Wolverine was in everything. And I feel like that's another reason why they didn't want to change much, is because they were like, well, Wolverine's making us money, so why would we change
they were
anything?
also in the process of, like, movie-wise, there were no X-Men.
Yeah,
right.
That's true.
So like, a part of the MCU.
Yeah. So
everything was about the Avengers. Everything was like, so the X-Men, like, what came out of it with the X-Men, and then they really started pushing, because I think they were hoping to some degree to pump up the Inhumans at some point. Which was a whole other thing. But this was the event that sent the X-Men, like, down into the gutters.
They went to Fox jails
for years. Years. And it was really too bad, because and I would agree with you. Like, if we put it in the bad execution, it was a good idea. It was too long. There were points of it that were just made it bad, and it just at the end just didn't pay off. Yeah. Although there were some really cool moments, sprinkled in. Well, you have to. There was 13 issues.
Yeah, it could have been better, and that's the biggest thing.
I think it almost went on for, like, it must have gone on for at least half a year.
Yeah, some
it was
crazy
ridiculous.
like that. Yeah. I don't even know, man. Like it was long, but yeah, I mean, that's the biggest issue. Is like it could have been better, and it's just sad.
Yep.
So the next one you have coming up, Rick Remender in 2014 does Axis. So I remember this. I remember seeing the ads for it.
Yeah.
And every ad I saw for it, I was like, this doesn't interest me whatsoever. I don't know what it's about. I don't know. All I see is Red Skull Onslaught. That's the only thing they would show, and I'm like, Like, I mean, it has potential, but it's never got around to it. Like, I didn't read it until we said we are going to do this podcast. And I was like, okay, I'll read it before we get into it. So, like, were you into it when it first came out?
Yeah, because it was the run of the Uncanny Avengers, where so on the heels of AVX, basically Captain America, the Avengers, and the X-Men said, look, man, we gotta do something to bring us all together. Mm-hmm. So they create a unity squad, basically of half Avengers and half X-Men, which was the Uncanny Avengers. Their first big bad guy that they come across is they start dealing with the Red Skull, but the Red Skull with now Xavier dead. Don't ask me how he did this, because it doesn't make any sense. But he takes Xavier's brain.
Oh, no.
And gets his brain, and now he's got Xavier's powers in the Red Skull. So
a Nazi with the global
yes, telepathy. And that's exactly what he does. He just starts spreading hate.
Yeah.
Right? And again, it was like, okay, is this some kind of like hidden message? Okay, because the Unity Squad is all running around stopping people from hating each other, kind of thing. This was the culmination, like the end point of that kind of run, and I was excited about it in the sense of like, okay, it was coming to an end. There wasn't a lot of information regarding like, okay, what exactly is going to happen here. The first issue is exactly where it happened. Like the big bad fight starts, and by the end of it, there's a moment that basically flips everything. Mm-hmm. So anybody that was in the radius of this thing, now basically you have superheroes that are now assholes, and villains that are now good guys.
Yeah.
Right? And some of the aspects of it were great. Like the Hulk being a blubbering baby, and then the Hulk having a Hulk.
Claw. Dude, was I thought fantastic. It was hilarious. I didn't see it coming. Yeah. I thought it was going to be like a reversion of like, you have the Hulk, but the Hulk turns into Bruce Banner, and Bruce Banner's like an asshole or something. Yeah, like Joe Fixit or something.
Yeah, or Joe Fixit or something. But they had these moments, but it just seemed really messy.
Yeah.
Like through the whole thing. And then the end left off, and it was like, okay, so we reversed it. So Iron Man's not the superior Iron Man anymore, right? He's not wearing his white armor and, whatever he's running around. They did this, but there were a few people that were left outside the bubble, so they stayed the way they were.
Yeah.
Which was great, because I was like, oh, okay, Sabretooth now has absolute remorse for everything that he's done, because he's a good guy, and he's like, oh my god, I killed a lot of people.
Yeah, a lot.
Havoc is now like, no, I'm a bad guy, right? And these few people that got left outside the bubble, I was like, oh, this is awesome. And then nothing came of it.
Nothing came of it. Yeah.
And it was just such a letdown.
Yeah.
The idea was neat, especially knowing, okay, we're going to end where some of these people don't get switched back, and then see where their stories go after that. It just didn't...
A lot of potential.
It just didn't pan out at all.
I think my biggest issue with it, like you said, was the pacing was really weird.
So bad.
It starts off with the big fight.
Yeah.
And then it just peters off, and it's one of those things where it's like, okay, what's happening? Then you have the slow buildup of some people are evil now, some people are good, which was interesting. Then it just kind of like, ended. We reversed everything, don't worry about it.
There was some cool moments, some cool thoughts, some neat ideas, just didn't...
Thoughts about Claw. Let me. Yeah. This is how I knew the thing. I was like, this is stupid as hell. Like, I thought the design was amazing. It was pretty cool. Him black and red and stuff was really cool. Why would you call him Claw? That's such a stupid ass name. I gotta guess it's reverse.
It's Hulk backwards.
It's Hulk backwards. That's stupid.
Everybody was backwards.
I read that and I was like, no. That's so dumb. That's so dumb. I could not let it go. I was like, you ruined everything with this. I don't know what else. And like, I think having evil Avengers is interesting. It's something that, I mean, they tried it with Dark Reign, but it was Dark Reign. It was just different because they were actual villains. And then you have it later in a different storyline, but then that's also with Secret Empire, which is complicated. I feel like flipping heroes to villains and villains to hero, it will always be inherently interesting. Like, you have so much potential.
Yep.
Like, having Carnage as your friendly neighborhood Carnage was hilarious. That's insane. And like, having him sacrifice himself to save everybody was crazy. But it's inherently interesting. But yeah, it just kind of faltered. Other than that, it was just so weird.
Yeah, it just fell flat, and it was there were some neat ideas in there, but it just overall was.
So would you say good idea, bad execution, or would you say just?
I would say it was a good idea, bad execution, because I did enjoy like the idea and the premise. Like, as you got through the first and second issue and you realized what was going on, like the X-Men are now working with Apocalypse.
Yeah,
like it just,
that was cool.
Like, these things are going on. You're like, oh, this is going to be interesting, and then it just was like did not pay off.
Yeah, nothing happened.
Not at all.
I also feel like it kind of bothers me that they didn't flip everybody. Like, Spider-Man was fine. Spider-Man was still Spider-Man, but it would have been interesting to have evil Spider-Man.
Oh, yeah.
The other thing
I think there would have been some heroes that would have been way more interesting to have flipped.
The other thing about it is the fact that some of the heroes turned evil, but then never did anything that they would have regretted when they turned back to human. Back to good. Like Falcon, Captain America, I think he was at the time, was a huge dick.
Oh, big time.
But he didn't kill anybody. So
didn't do anything.
So when he came back to good guy, it's like, oh.
Yeah, he just said a couple mean things.
Yeah, exactly. That's all he did. Yeah. He just said F
Now, Iron Man had his own comic.
Oh, yeah. He was
Superior.
insane.
He was just a complete dickhead. Mm-hmm. Like, just an ass.
Yeah. But it didn't last long.
No.
Yeah. It definitely could have been better.
Yeah.
Then you have... so like we kind of said, I was saying earlier, you had like the dark ages of crossover events where it's like a lot of them don't matter. They're just there for you're just there for the money grab. Then you have freaking Secret Wars by Jonathan Hickman in 2015. Let Jonathan Hickman do whatever he wants. Like, Marvel or DC, whoever it is, just give him all the money he wants. Let him do whatever. Because when he's busy world building and doing all those crazy things, that guy's brain is insane. Like Secret Wars is basically like, you get this build up of in the Avengers, or was it just Avengers or Secret Avengers or something like that?
It was all the Avengers. The New Avengers, which was basically the Illuminati.
Yeah.
You had the regular Avengers. Mm-hmm. And I think it was the Mighty Avengers was the other one. But there was basically all the Avengers comics were kind of slowly building towards this event. So
basically, they all realize that there's alternate universes out there, and for some reason, all the alternate universes are just killing each other.
They're colliding.
And this is still when alternate universes existed. Hey, shout out to me. Type of thing. So basically, all the universes are. So what the Illuminati decided to do is like, let's just blow up all the other universes.
Yeah, before they can
kill us. It's either us or them, right?
Yeah.
So then you had this huge battle. So basically what happens is the last universe alive is Ultimate Universe. You have Ultimate Universes versus 616 going at each other, trying to figure out who's going to live. And then just, I can't remember how it ends initially, but it's Doom,
Molecule Man, and Stephen Strange.
Get together.
Hey, we need to fix this because they're moving towards getting to the Beyonders.
Yeah.
And basically, again, Doom gets the power.
Yeah.
And takes all these universes and just patches them together like Frankenstein.
Yeah. You get Battle World.
Yes.
So basically, yes, Doom, all the multiverse, all the universes that have happened throughout Marvel history are just shoved into one place. You have zombies have their own section. Ultimate Universe has its own. House of M has its own section.
And each of them are separated by a giant
wall. So you had this crazy scene of Old Man Logan going, "What's up with this wall?" Like, it was just insane to see all the crazy things they could do with this universe.
Yeah.
And then not only that, but then to have the main storyline of them trying to figure out how to beat God Doom.
Yeah.
Like, how you had him wipe out Thanos in half a second. You had him he had an army of Thors as his police officers.
Oh,
yeah. So many crazy things in this storyline.
Yeah.
It was so good.
It was so good because it also said, hey, let's go down memory lane here, and we'll go revisit some of these other things and just twist it a little bit.
Yeah.
So we're going to take a look at Civil War, but Civil War never ended.
Yeah.
Right? And the division, stayed where it was, and what came out of that. It went into all these different series and just kind of said, well, what if we just changed it a little bit, or just played it out a little bit? Inferno, House of M, all of them. Like there were so many. There were some really good ones, and then some really bad ones that were horrible. My favorite by far was Old Man Logan, just because he literally is just chomping along and is after the mini run that he had, and then he's like, what's on the other side of this wall? And it's just issue after issue after issue of him going to different worlds, essentially on Battle World, and trying to figure out what the hell's going on. And the zombie one was absolutely amazing. It was just such a good run, and the main arc itself was so good. And again, it completely changed everything, because coming out of that, it scared the hell out of a lot of Spider-Man fans. Yeah. Because the first Spider-Man title that they announced was Spider-Man, but it was Miles Morales. Yeah. And everybody was like, oh my god, they got rid of Peter Parker, and everybody was losing their minds. Yeah. And then, of course, they brought out the Peter Parker, the Amazing Spider-Man one afterwards. Yeah. But still, it was just the whole thing was just, it couldn't help but be epic and completely groundbreaking and changing by the end. Yeah, it was. Yeah. Fantastic Four gone. Yep. They're doing their own thing. Yeah. Doctor Doom decides, I need to be Iron Man. Yeah. I need to be a good guy. Yeah. It was just so many aspects of it that just came out with different characters and all these things that came out.
Doom in his whole white. Yeah, it was so good. I think my biggest sad point about this was we lost the Ultimate Universe. And I mean, as a person who was with Ultimate Universe, that was my first comic series and all that stuff I read. And it was going to such interesting places, especially Ultimate X-Men, Miles Morales. I mean, they kept Miles Morales, so there you go. But Ultimate X-Men was going in such interesting place. To me, Ultimate X-Men is what led into Hoxpox and all that stuff. So it's very interesting. But other than that, it's so cool. But I mean, the good news is then you have Miles Morales hanging out with 616 heroes, and he actually is recognized now as a real comic.
Yeah, he's the guy, the main Marvel universe.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact that they also kind of just went any alternate reality character we enjoy, hey, they're now
you're now in,
you're canon now. Yeah. You had Spider-Gwen is a person now. You have all this stuff, right? So yeah, definitely I would put it as a classic. Yeah. To me, it's funny that it's called Secret Wars, because it literally just feel like Secret War. But modernized and better and whatnot. I mean, you had Molecule Man, you had Doom, you had all that stuff. So I mean, obviously that's what they were doing, but they lived up to the expectations and more, right? Yeah. So it was good. So now, you get off of Secret Wars, crazy stuff happens. Feeling good. And then you move into Civil War 2 by Brian Michael Bendis. You got Brian Michael Bendis back. You got Civil War back, how can you go wrong? But boy, did they go wrong.
No, they went wrong. And it came out right at the same time as Civil War, the Captain America movie. Yeah. This was a prime example of, hey, we got to capitalize on the movie out at the same time the comic book is. And this was awful.
It wasn't great.
Which was sad because Bendis, great. Yep. The art was good. The artist was one of the better artists going on at that time. This was just a garbage fire, horrible thing.
I don't think it was as bad as Fear itself. I think it had some good points, Hawkeye killing Hulk was pretty prolific. You had the beginning of it, which was Falcon dying, or no, Rhodey. It was Rhodey dying, and then you had She-Hulk going crazy and all that stuff. That big thing. I think the biggest thing that holds us back is what you were saying is it was the outside factors of they were trying to push Inhumans, which nobody wanted. But because they wanted to get rid of X-Men.
The TV series was
so bad. They were trying to push Captain Marvel, which I like Captain Marvel. But the way they were trying to push her in this one was so weird.
Yeah, you got evil Captain America who's just kind of dancing around nobody notices I'm bad.
Yeah. You had I think the biggest thing for me that really why Iron Man again? You replaced Captain America with Captain Marvel, which is good. Yeah. But why not replace Iron Man with somebody else? I guess they didn't have anybody that could fill that role. But at this point in my mind, I was so sick of Iron Man being the main, the secondary. Actually,
he was always catching shit. He's always on the wrong side of every fight.
Well, that's the thing, right? Is
Why?
Yeah, Iron Man was always the bad guy in
Yeah.
like anything that was happening. Like, especially after this one, and like we get into Secret Empire and a lot of the other ones, it's like he's the same every single one where everybody goes, Tony, you're wrong. And he goes like, I'm not wrong, fuck you. And then he like eventually goes, you know what, guys, I was wrong. And then he builds something and then they win, you know, type of thing. And it's like, you can't just keep doing that every single time.
You see, in reading this one, I was like, I agree with Iron Man because Iron Man's going like, you know, trying to point out the fact that like you saw the future or what you think is the future, so you raced in to deal with the future, which then caused X event, and in this case, it was the death of his best friend, and She-Hulk got absolutely messed up. So I can kind of see where you're saying like by watching the future and acting on what you think is the future, you caused this to happen instead of just letting it happen. I didn't agree with Captain Marvel at all.
No,
I didn't agree with. In fact, I kind of felt like they did her a poor service in the sense of like just making her. She's horrible.
Yeah.
Horrible. And anybody that was siding with her was horrible.
Yeah. It was really sad to see. And like that was the best part about Civil War 1 is you could see the argument from both sides. But really in Civil War 2, if you agreed with Captain Marvel, like you're kind of a psychopath. Like, come on.
Like it was just like it was I don't know, Marvel's Minority Report. It was it was just bad.
Yeah, in 1984. And again it's one of those things where it's like they were just trying to push Inhumans so much and nobody wanted it. Stop trying to make Inhumans happen.
It was forced.
Yeah.
It was not needed at the time, other than the fact that they were like, hey, let's make Inhumans cool, and basically everybody said no. and we need to put this out because we have a movie.
Yeah. And the ending was nothing. No. The ending was like the guy turns into a Watcher, and then everybody's like, okay, I guess we're friends now. And that was like, or sort of? Like, I don't even know.
And Iron Man is in a coma?
Yeah, that's what happened. Oh, and then you had the whole vision of Miles Morales killing Captain America, which we'll get into with the next one. But the ending was just so weird and so
it was just bad.
Yeah. So like, would you put it as forget it existed? Or
I forgot it happened.
You forgot it happened?
I flat out forgot it happened.
I probably would put it in just okay, but I'll put it in forget it exists for you. I think it had some interesting points, but yeah, we'll put it there for now. So the next one that happens is Secret Empire. So, again, there's certain ones in here where I didn't read it at the time when they came out. I read it when we decided to do the podcast. Yeah. Secret Empire is one of those. I was like, I'm not interested at all in Secret Empire. Then I start reading it. For some reason, I don't know, this one it stuck with me. And I don't think it was perfect. I don't even think it was great. I just think it had so many interesting things in it that could have been so good if they had just executed a little bit better.
Yeah.
And like it was enough for me to go like, I'll give it a passing grade type of thing. Yeah. Like I thought Andre Sorrentino, I'm a huge fan of now. Mm-hmm. Like for some reason the way he drew was super gritty. Yeah. And then they would constantly in their coloring, what they would do is just one splash of one color. And it would increase, for some reason, it would just increase the tension of every single scene. And you felt like every single... Oh, I guess we should explain what's happening. Sorry, I completely jumped into it. So Secret Empire is by Nick Spencer. Basically what happens is you find out that Captain America has been Hydra the whole time. Yes. And that he helps Hydra take over the entire... Or at least, sorry, the US of A. He tricks everybody into making a giant bubble around Earth, which blocks a lot of the most powerful superheroes on the other side of Earth. And so then he starts taking over America, and it's just like this crazy, like, Captain America's evil. Yeah. The whole, that famous Hail Hydra scene that happened. So but for some reason, I don't know, this one just really stuck with me. I don't know what it was. And I want to hear your opinion on it.
I felt like this was a fix. Because they way back in the day, they decided that Captain America was going to become old. Yeah. Which was just god awful. And in all honesty, when he handed the shield to Sam, and then Sam had like a 6 or 7 issue run as the new Captain America, and they had Stuart Immonen doing the art, and the writer was awesome. It was fantastic. Yeah. It was so good, and it just ended. Yeah, like it was so horrible. So then they started his other comic book series, and then they had the other comic book series because they're like, oh, well, what do we do with, Captain America here? Mm-hmm. Well, in order to get Captain America back to being, young, they go to, like, this Pleasantville, like, prison where they've brainwashed all of the villains into thinking that they're just like, I'm the milkman, in Pleasantville. Yeah. And there's a, like, living entity of the Cosmic Cube who's a little girl. And the Red Skull somehow has convinced her, this like all powerful being, to do these things. And anyways, that was the way that they got Captain America to be young again. But at that same time, she rewrote his history at behest of the Red Skull, and now he's a bad guy.
Yeah.
So I know when he said Hail Hydra, everybody freaked out, lost their mind. I felt like this was probably one of the messiest cleanup jobs, not necessarily Secret Empire itself, but just like everything that was going up that led up to this was just absolutely atrociously badly written, horrible shit. They did a good job. I felt like the execution wasn't totally there, but there was some good stuff, and it was basically a, hey, you made a good thing out of a really horrible storylines for the last couple years.
Yeah. Like, it should have been worse than it was.
It should have been way worse.
Yeah. I think the things that save it were the art was really, like, to me, it's not that, like, his art is, like, perfect. It's just, like, it fit the story in a way that it made it feel tense. Yeah. Like, anytime you had Black Widow just looking around going, like, we have to kill him. You felt that. You're like, you feel, and like the fact that all the heroes were just like absolutely destroyed, and we're just like, I don't know if we can win. Like when they blow up Las Vegas, and like all the heroes are like, there's just bodies everywhere. Like you felt that emotion, like what and what. I think the other things I enjoyed about it was having another evil team of Avengers was fun. In this, because you had evil Scarlet Witch, evil Vision, evil Captain America, and then I think Taskmaster was a part of it, and then a couple other people who were like, so it was like a mix of like Dark Avengers, a little bit type of thing. And I thought the Hydra part of it was really cool, like seeing all the Hydra villains kind of be in charge was fun, and like seeing what the way the comic starts is like a kid's in school, and you think everything's normal, he has a Captain America lunchbox, all this stuff. Then suddenly they're in classroom, it's like, yeah, Hail Hydra, and it's like, wait, what? Type of thing, like this hard 180 turn, and like there's just all the small details that really add up. I think the things that really take away from it was they just felt the need to have the Miles Morales Captain America kills Captain America thing. I felt like if you had taken that out of it, like it would have been way better. I still think have Black Widow try to teach the champions, how to be killers was interesting. But and the other thing about this that I felt was really a downside was it was really long for some reason. Yeah. Like it would alternate between one issue would be about the heroes on land, one issue would be about the heroes in space, and then one issue would be about Captain America. And they did it kept rotating that way.
It was just broken up.
Like especially the ones in space didn't need to be that long.
No.
It was really the same thing every single time of Captain Marvel going like, oh my bad, and then feeling sad, and then but you must have been happy I had Quasar for one issue.
No, I just overall, like I said, I just felt like it just cleaned up. Like and maybe it was because of the mess that preceded it. I really had a hard time getting into it. Yeah. Because I was just like, I want this to be over, and I want them to fix what they broke. Yeah. And get to the end. Get to the end so I get, because I don't even think they paid it off, like in the sense of, okay, then you have Captain America come back and Captain America beats Captain America. Yeah. Right? But the Captain America that's a bad guy, he goes away, and I was like, okay, that could be an interesting leftover hook. They just basically killed him in the Captain America series that came out next. They just got rid of him. Yep. Just like that.
I think another thing that would have saved this storyline is if it had been somebody other than Captain America. Or what it would have been is if this had been like an alternate reality storyline that didn't involve the MCU. Like if this had been outside of not MCU, but the Marvel comic book universe. Like if this had been like, a situation like Superman Red Sun, where it's its own standalone thing. It's just a theoretical what if of him landing in somewhere else.
These kinds of things as like a what if miniseries would be great. Yeah.
But then they forced it into a crossover event.
Yeah, it was forced into a crossover event, and to me it was just like, in all honesty, when it came out, and I just didn't care or really know it was even going on, because I was just so disappointed with so many of the storylines that were leading into it that I didn't care.
Yeah. And I mean, that's probably what helped me out, is my expectations were so low that when I did read it, I was like, okay, it's not that bad, type of thing, and like it had potential. But yeah, I definitely feel like I put it as a good idea, bad execution. Yes. Like I feel like it could have been so much.
Exactly where I put it. Yep.
Yeah, but it I don't know, for some reason it definitely appealed to me for some reason. I don't know why. It just appealed to me for some reason. So now you have the next one. We're jumping over to 2019. Jason Aaron is in charge, and he does War of the Realms. This one is interesting. So like, I love Jason Aaron. I'll
not dispute that.
No, my favorite parts about Jason Aaron is he'll take an idea and he does what I find a lot of manga do, which is just escalate. So like when he wrote Ghost Rider, you had him like, you know, he starts off, he's just Johnny Blaze doing Ghost Rider things, then suddenly he's fighting God. And like, he's just really good at that, just escalation. And that was kind of like what I felt like War of the Realms had potential to do, which was like, you start off with just what's his name, Malekith.
Yeah.
Has an entire army of all the evil Asgardian people, and he just goes to Earth and blows everything up, like takes over the entire planet. And I was just like, man, where is this going? Like, this could go in so many places. What were your thoughts on War of the Realms?
I didn't like it.
No? Okay, tell me why.
Couldn't get into it. I just, again, I don't know what it is about it's funny because one of my favorite graphic novels of all time was when the X-Men go to Asgard, right? And at one point you get like Thor Storm.
Yeah, that's sick.
Which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I don't know what it is, like when you take large doses of the Thor and more like Norse mythology kind of stuff and then cram it into like the real, I don't know what it is. I just can't buy into it. And I just, right from the start, there was like obviously some cool, you know, shocker moments at the beginning, like Loki getting eaten.
Yeah.
You know, there was definitely some very interesting moments, but I just couldn't, it was just one of those, and I think it's just, in all honesty, a personal preference. I just couldn't get into it.
Which is surprising me, because you like Jason Aaron's run on Thor.
Yeah.
So you think you would like it. See, that's what I felt like this whole storyline is I enjoyed it for the sense of it was just a bloody murder fest of like, you have giants, you have zombies, you have all these people that are just taking over the whole planet, and you just have all the superheroes just going no holds barred. Like the Punisher shooting elves was hilarious. He's like, I don't know who the frick you are, but I'll shoot you, man. Like, that was so funny. And it was just like the one part of me was just like, why are these heroes so willing to kill alternate dimension beings but not humans, which is really weird to think, but then at the same time it's like, forget about it. They're looking to stab that giant. Let them do it. Like, to me though, it didn't feel like a crossover event. It felt like a Thor storyline that just had his friends hang out. Like all the scenes where it was like, you know, Spider-Man and Captain America traipsing through Jotunheim trying to find Thor. It was hilarious, but it was like super like, I mean, Thor is the main character here. That's the only thing. And like seeing Thor with like missing arm just murdering all the ice giants was so cool. Like it
there
had
were definitely some cool moments.
Yeah. Like, I think, but again, I don't feel like this should have been a crossover event. I feel like it should have just been a Thor storyline in the end.
It was a crossover event because there were more people in it.
Yeah. They needed, what happened was Marvel go, and we need another crossover event. Aaron, what do you got? And he's like, I'll murder everybody. He's like, sweet, go in there. Exactly. Type of thing. Yeah. So, like, I think it's a good time. I don't think it's, like, a classic or anything like that. No. Like, I would be interested to see this animated. I think
I think there would certainly be some fans out there that really enjoyed it. You know, so I'm not going to be, you know, for myself, I just try to forget that it that it existed. Yeah, I don't know what it was. It just turned me off. But you know, again, I think it's just a very personal, you know, what I like. And but I think like the actual writing and, you know, what happened and some of the cool moments that happened in it, you know, I think it was certainly one that people would go like, yeah, I enjoyed it. It was fun. But really, again, it just didn't leave you with,
oh yeah, there's no repercussions.
There's no repercussions. It was just like, oh, a bunch of frost giants ran downtown Manhattan and smashed and shit. And that was it.
Like, I mean, Jane Foster's a Valkyrie now, I guess is
and Thor's
God? Or Odin's son? Or Thor's Allfather.
Yeah.
See, I would bump it up to it's just okay. Like, I don't think it's... I think you should read it if you have time. Like, it's a good time.
It wasn't Civil War 2.
Yeah, or Feud itself. Like, I don't think it deserves to be that low. But yeah, no, I like Jason Aaron, so I'll read anything he reads. I heard you were telling me his Avengers run is a little iffy, but
yeah, it's not been great.
Yeah, but I mean, War of the Realms was like I said, I'd love to see an animated War of the Realms, kind of like what DC does, where they just animate random side stories. I think that'd be fun. Just watch them all get murdered, and like Spider-Man with his horse. That's no, what is
and a helmet.
Yeah, his helmet, and then like doesn't somebody go like, why the fuck do you have a shield? Type of thing. And it's like Captain America has one. It's like, yeah, but he's Captain America. Why do you have a shield? That was so funny. So now you got next one. Again, this one I wasn't sure if it counted as a crossover event. It's Sumless had it, Sumless didn't, which was Absolute Carnage by Donny Cates. So one of the things that happened in War of the Realms was Malekith turns Venom's symbiote into the Necrosword, which was a shout out to Jason Aaron's run of Thor back in 2013, which was also what Donny Cates was building into with Null. In Venom. So if you read Venom, you'll know a little bit about Null. Basically turns out the Necrosword is just like a symbiote sword type of thing. So Venom finds out that the other thing that happened that before this, if I forgot to mention it, in Axis, Carnage dies. I think I did mention that. So Carnage dies. You have Null who's trying to return to Earth to get this to kill things. He just wants a reason to kill things. And so Carnage gets resurrected by this evil cult who loves Null, and then they're trying to do is, I mean, it's Cletus Cassidy, so he's insane. He's like, I'm going to collect all the symbiote people who've had symbiotes before, and then I'm going to get them all together to power myself so I can awaken Null, and then he's going to come murder everybody, and I'm having a great time. What's your thoughts on Absolute Carnage?
It was a cleanup. It was a cleanup from years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I dislike so much anything that they do with the symbiotes because like the fact that they took like, okay, Spider-Man had a suit and it was like, the black suit wasn't really well received, and I don't know if it was so much at the time it was the black suit, because I love the black suit. I love the black suit, but I don't know if it was like the black suit itself or the fact that it was like this suit that he could just, morph into clothing and stuff, and people just didn't buy into it. I don't know what it was, but then they pushed him off. It's like, okay, the symbiote's kind of feeding off of him. It's a symbiote. Oh, it's sentient. It's live. Okay, and then you got, Venom, who at first was terrifying and great because he turned off a lot of Spider-Man's powers, like his spider sense and whatnot, and just hated him, and that was the only thing that he was there for. I'm just here to hate Spider-Man. I just want my revenge on Spider-Man. I don't care about villains. I'm not gonna rob a bank. I'm just here to kill Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Eventually, as that continued to go on, all of a sudden you hit this period in time where they were just like, hey, symbiotes are fun. So they had like Maximum Carnage, and then there was like all these different symbiotes, and then they had a symbiote planet, which of course played into where we're going, with King in Black. And it was just symbiote overload. It was at that point, it was like if Spider-Man was anything, you had to have Venom. It was like Venom took Green Goblin's spot as like the main villain for Spider-Man, and it was just ridiculous.
Well,
I hated it. Yeah. Carnage was probably the only additional symbiote that I liked, because it was just like, you have, Venom, who's got a code, you want to call it, for lack of a better word, whereas Carnage's like, what if we get the symbiote to somebody who's crazy and is a mass murderer? Right? And that was cool to have him. Yeah. But then, it just, I just didn't buy into all the symbiote stuff. I just don't like it. I just think they made too much out of, like, they took a little thing that was originally just like, hey, let's have Spider-Man have a suit that can turn into clothing, and now all of a sudden he's a world dominating,
the essence of darkness.
Yeah, exactly. I just being a long-time Spider-Man fan, no.
Well, Dave, there's a little thing called the 90s. Yeah. Everything was extreme in the 90s. Exactly. Everything. I think it kind of depends on what your opinion is on the symbiote thing. Like, I'm fine with it. Like, I have no problem having the symbiote. Like, I love Carnage. He's my favorite symbiote guy. I think what Donny Cates has been doing with Venom is really cool. And, like, I mean, obviously it leads into Absolute Carnage and whatnot. And I feel like, I mean, yeah, it's kind of annoying sometimes when they take out small detail and it turns into the world's biggest thing. It's like, it's a bit of a stretch, but I thought it was at least plausible that the symbiote could be more. I think.
Yeah, I mean, he had pretty much carte blanche to do what he wanted with it because there was nothing.
No,
it was just
exactly,
basically
right.
he was
Make
a
it
suit.
much.
I
think
so. I understood. I understand. The Venom side. I just not my favorite character. Don't read a lot of Venom. But I get that part. That part doesn't bother me. In fact, I'm glad they brought it back to Eddie Brock Venom like this, because the other Venoms that they were running around with, like Flash Thompson stuff, was just like extremely.
Well, I mean, that was
extremely annoying.
That was a big part of this comic, was let's get everybody who's ever have a symbiote back together. So you had Captain America, Wolverine, Thing. And that's kind of the reason it's kind of a crossover event. Type of thing.
And I felt with these ones, it's just like it was an excuse to just go. Well, kind of like one of the World War Hulks with an S. It was like, okay, what if we just, what would it be? It would be cool if we gave a symbiote to this character or that character. It was just like, let's put a symbiote on everybody and just see what they look like.
Exactly.
It was like the World War Hulks, where they were like, oh, could you imagine other superheroes got imbued like the Hulk? So you have like Wolverine Hulk, Spider-Man Hulk, Thor Hulk.
So
like,
stupid.
Come on, guys. Like, you guys are professional writers. This was just embarrassing. This, to me, like, as far as the Carnage aspect of it, like, obviously it was playing into something that was coming on down the road, but I felt like the Carnage aspect of him, like, gathering up all these symbiotes and whatnot was, like, their way of just kind of cleaning up a very messy storyline. And that's basically all Absolute Carnage was to me.
Yeah.
It was, hey, we're going to hint at something coming, but right now we got to clean up our room.
Yeah.
Because it's a mess.
Yeah. I think my standout parts of it is the design for, like, Undead Carnage was super,
it was
like,
really,
him with, like, his spine.
Stegman was, his art was awesome. Awesome.
And then I just like what Cates is doing with Eddie Brock, like his storyline with his son and, like, him, like, what does it mean to be Venom and all this stuff. Yeah. And then you also had Symbiote Hulk, so that was a good time. So Symbiote Immortal Hulk, which was a good time. So so it was interesting. And then you had the Maker too, which I love. And like it was so funny when Spider-Man was like, "Oh, who's this?" And he's like, "I'm Reed Richards." It's like, are you? Type of thing. I don't know if you are. Type of thing. So I love the Maker. Anytime the Maker's in there, I'm having a good time. So it had potential, but yeah, it definitely didn't feel like it needed to be a crossover event. I feel like it could have just been a Venom storyline. It would have been fine. So where would you rank it?
I originally put it as I forgot about it because I just really didn't care about it. But I would say it was just, I would say it's just okay. It's like in the sense of, like, if you're a Venom fan and you're you're reading through to getting to the King in Black, this was definitely a point that you have to read, and it had to happen. I just don't think it needed to happen on the level.
Oh yeah, they blew it up. Again, it felt a lot like War of the Realms, where it was just a solid, crazy storyline that they forced into a crossover event, and it's like it didn't need to be.
Yeah.
So before we get into King of Black, you had another storyline. You have Empire. So basically, what happens? Oh, God. Yeah. So basically, what happens is you have the Skrull and the Kree, who are longtime enemies since the 70s, 60s, or something. Like forever enemies. Basically, what happens is Hulkling from the Young Avengers is like, "Hey, I'm half and half. I'll take over," type of thing.
I'm going to unite.
And so what you think is, with the premise of it, is that he's going to come to Earth as a Empire to take over. Because I mean, they always have issues with Earth. But what ends up happening instead is this random plant people.
Yes.
I don't even know, Chitauri. No, they're not Chitauri. Man, what the frick were they called? But basically, this random plant people who were mentioned in, like, one comic in the 70s randomly decided to take over Earth first.
Yeah.
Or something like that. And it was just like, and then, hijinks ensue type of thing.
Yeah.
And, like, the thing that blows my mind about this is you had two writers in charge. You had Al Ewing, who is slowly becoming my favorite writer.
Yes.
Like, he's so good. But then you had Dan Slott.
Yeah.
So if you've listened to this podcast, you know before.
Now you feel my pain.
You feel the pain. Like, you could tell what parts were Al Ewing and what parts were Dan Slott. And you're just like, oh my gosh. Like, stop it. So basically, yeah, it was supposed to be this, like, epic empirical space battle politics craziness that turns into an all-out planet on Earth, war on Earth, but then it just turns into nothing.
Yeah.
100%. Like,
it was awful. There were two things I want to say about this. One of the best things that came out of it wasn't even in the actual series. It was in the Fantastic Four crossovers, where they reunited the old makeshift Fantastic Four that came to save the day when the Fantastic Four were just like not available.
Yeah.
And that Fantastic Four was Spider-Man, Wolverine, the Hulk,
yeah,
and Ghost Rider.
Yeah.
So you got the craziest. You know, they did a shout out to that, which was awesome.
Yeah.
It was really good in that. But other than that, this was an absolute waste of time.
Yeah. I don't know why.
I don't know how else to put it.
Like
And the second thing I want to say is, I'm sorry I bought it for you for a graphic novel.
Hey, I mean, it was okay.
It was awful. It was awful. You take that and burn it. It was so
I like
bad.
Al Ewing. Yeah. And the art was good.
Al Ewing was good. The work, the art was good. There were some like all series. Like, again, you're not going to read this and go like, oh, they're right. This was just absolutely horrible right through. There were moments of like in anything where you go, oh, okay.
Yeah. Nothing other than Fear itself. Nothing's 100% shit.
Yeah.
So, like, I mean, the other thing that I enjoyed about it is I do like Young Avengers, but Young Avengers haven't been on the scene since, like, Civil War. Like, it's been so long since they've been relevant to suddenly make Hulkling, like, the ruler of the galaxy was so random.
It was just so
it was
so
like,
bad.
why? And then the way they solved the problem was, oh, Hulkling just need to get laid. You know, and I was like, oh, he's fine now. Type of thing. And then it's like, okay.
I don't know how that has anything to do with the plant people, but sure.
Yeah, sure, we'll take it. It just had so much potential, and it just, and it's funny because, like, I don't even want to put it in Good Idea Bad Execution because I don't want to give it that much credit, right?
No, it's a forget.
It's a forget.
It even
like,
existed.
It shouldn't have been a thing.
Well, that's exactly what it was. Like there were crossovers in X-Men and like everything else. Like it was all there, but it literally, like, I'm reading the issues that it crossed over, and like it had Empire written on it, right? It was like okay, and you're reading it, and it's like this, like, literally doesn't even mention Empire.
Not once. Yeah.
Like, what is this?
Like, this was, like, the worst case.
This was, hey, we have a month where we don't have a miniseries running, so let's crank something out.
100%.
That's what this was.
Like, this is, like, one of the worst cases of, like, everything has to be crossed over, but then nothing matters. Like, 100%. Yeah. It's so bad. So last one I have, I mean, you'll see on the video here, if you can see it, I have Original Sin.
Yes.
Which again, some lists had included, and Original Sin came out in, like, I don't even know, like 2013 or something like that. So did you end up reading it? Or?
Yes, I read the whole thing. I was extremely disappointed. Like, it was nothing.
It was nothing.
It was absolutely nothing, and it created in some cases some of the worst shit I've ever seen. Like with Spider-Man, the Original Sin was like, oh, hey, guess what? There was actually another person that got bit by a spider, and it was Silk, and that was just awful.
Yeah, it was
nothing. The character is awful. I don't care what anybody says. The character's awful. You already have Spider-Woman, Spider-Girl, Spider like coming out of everywhere, and then you're gonna inject another spider. Like, it just didn't make any sense. Yeah. The Thor thing where it was like, we're gonna tell you something, and then you're gonna be unworthy because now you know something, and now you can't pick up your hammer.
Yeah.
Like, it just, the whole, I mean, that did set up obviously Jane Foster being Thor for a bit. But it just, the whole thing, like, all the little things that it brought up in the fact that Tony Stark was somehow involved in how Hulk was created, and that the accident was caused because of Tony somehow in some convoluted way. It was just poorly executed. And again, it was another one of these miniseries that, like, you know, I'm collecting my comics, I'm reading along, and all of a sudden I was like, huh, what? Where did this come from? And it was just out.
Yeah. The one thing I will say about it is I did enjoy Nick Fury's storyline. Like, him secretly being, like, the defender of everything was interesting. Yeah. It ended up being really weird, but it had potential. But yeah, it was definitely, I mean, it was so much a forget it existed. Most people didn't even have it on a list of crossover.
Yeah, because it's just like, I mean, the whole promo for it, like, when I first saw it was like, who killed the Watcher? Yeah. And it's like, holy shit, what? Yeah. The Watcher is dead?
Nobody cared.
Yeah. Wasn't that important?
No.
And the person that killed him, really probably couldn't.
Yeah. So. Oh, that was the other funny thing. Yeah, it was the orb.
But the eyeball.
Yeah. What a guy. So anyway, so the last one we have here, which just came out. I mean, like we said, Dark Ages is just happening, so eventually I'll talk about Dark Ages. But the last one that just came out this year was King in Black by Donny Cates again in 20. It was one thing I just noticed though is that Empire and King in Black both came out in 2020, which is I'm curious to see. I wonder why both of them came out the same year. I think, well, you know, I think King of Black came out end of 2020, so kind of 2021, but yeah. But yeah, so King of Black, so you had Absolute Carnage and the whole Venom storyline building up to King of Black, which is basically Null is this all-powerful symbiote god who's coming to Earth and is going to wipe out the entire universe because he can, type of thing. And then so you have Eddie Brock and everybody on Earth going, it's coming, we got to prep. My son kind of can defeat symbiotes, but I don't want to use him because reasons. And then, yeah, just chaos ensues. Yeah. So, what are your thoughts on King of Black?
Very similar to Absolute Carnage, in the sense that if you like Venom, if that's your bag, it was good. You know, the art's fantastic. Stegman does a great job. There were definitely some shocking, you know, moments in what I have, you know, read and what I've seen, you know, because I haven't finished the series through its entirety, but what I have heard from other people, there was definitely some like, oh shit, you know, some oh shit moments, like, oh, whoa, okay, that happened. But you know, for me again, it was just like this character out of nowhere has like such an impactful bad guy. Yeah. Like, I've never seen anything Spider-Man's done, who's been around for like a freaking 100 years. I've never seen anything that Spider-Man's ever done in any of his crossovers or anything have any kind of an impact to the level of this. Like, where Null is basically killing the world. Yeah. Like, he's just destroying everything. Yeah. I just couldn't, like, again, me personally, I just couldn't buy in to it. I've heard great reviews from people saying like, oh, the writing was great and everything else. I can't dispute that. It's just, for me, art was there. The writer is definitely there. Cates is definitely becoming one of those like superstar writers. They're both there. I think for me, it was just personally, I just don't like the concept. Not even the story, just the concept, and I'm not a huge Venom fan.
Yeah, and I think that's the big thing that's just gonna hold you back on this is like, because I think the biggest thing about this and all of Cates' run in Venom is, man, he loves the 90s. And like the 90s in comics gets trolled so much in the fact that it was kind of a dark age of like everything was just big guns and muscles and everybody had pouches and it was just extreme and all that stuff. But I feel like what Cates does is he takes the good parts of it, like the goofy actiony parts, but then modernize it and gives it heart. And that's what actually makes it interesting. And having Eddie Brock have a son he cares about gives Venom, you know, purpose. And like, you know, and like having, you know, all the heroes get, you know, pushed to the brink of almost defeat and then having to come back, you know. It's not like the most like ideological gonna make you think storyline, but it has some good moments in it.
And I think you know, as far as you know what Cates has done with that character is absolutely, because Venom's had multiple, you know, runs of comics that they've tried to start, and there was nothing ever to them other than like Venom meet brains, you know, or whatever the hell it is. Whereas he's actually taken the character, now whether it's because he's like a huge Venom fan or if this was just like his first crack at it or whatever, he's turned him into a character, like an actual character. Like, other than me got symbiote, me go eat people, me, you know, like it was just before they just kept rerunning the same thing over and over again, and he's actually made something of the character.
So you said you didn't finish it. Do you want a spoiler for the end?
I know what happens there.
Captain Universe?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. That was, again, that's what made me go, this is 90s as hell, man. Yeah, Captain Universe Venom, like, show up and beat up Null. Like, that was so good. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it kind of reminds me, like, when you go back to watch, like, old Spielberg movies of, like, where they're, like, they're for kids, but they're randomly really dark, but in the end they always end up with a happy ending, you know, type of thing. So it kind of reminded me that way. So I don't know how you would read it or rank it without finishing it. What are you feeling so far?
It's a good read. Okay. It's definitely, like, if I, you know, take my personal bias out of it, it's definitely well written. The art is fantastic. It's got tons of characters, and I mean, like, okay, if you just park everything aside and you go, okay, who doesn't want to see other superheroes as symbiotes?
Oh, it always looks cool.
Like, it just always looks cool. So that aspect is always neat. For me, it's just not my my cup of tea.
Yeah, and like it's interesting that you would say it's a good read. I would even put it lower. I would put it just okay because I don't feel like it's one of those things where it's like everybody needs to read it. I feel like it's one of those, and again, it felt more.
I would say if you like Venom, read it.
Well, that's the other thing I was gonna say. It's a lot like War of the Realms, where like it didn't feel like a crossover event. It felt like a
that was
Venom,
the other thing.
Yeah.
Is yes, it had a whole bunch of people in it,
and it technically was a global catastrophe.
Yes,
but it felt more like a Venom storyline than
yes.
a crossover event. So I'm wondering if that's just a trend they're going to be doing from now on, where it's
I don't know
because
it's funny that they would like in most considerations that's considered a crossover event.
Yeah.
Now I would look at like certain ones like for instance, what about what about Spider-Verse?
Yeah, exactly.
Or Spider-Geddon.
Yeah.
Like some of those are Spider-Man. They even had a miniseries that went along with it.
Yeah.
There were other characters that were involved, but it wasn't considered a
crossover.
A crossover. Same thing with one of the which would have, if it was on this list, definitely would have been a classic, which was Age of Apocalypse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like world spanning, the whole world's changed.
Yeah.
Like those there are what I would say are miniseries that again, should they be on the list?
Yeah.
As an actual crossover event, it was a crossover event in X-Men.
Yeah.
But it affected the entire world. Well, that's essentially all that happened with King Black.
Yeah.
It was just a Spider-Man kind of thing.
Story.
Venom story that happened to encompass a lot more.
Yeah, I think that's the tricky part. And it's funny because I feel like the movies kind of run into this problem too, where you want to have a serious threat.
Yeah.
Like a global, like the world's going to end threat. But then you have some movies and comic books where it's like, well, then why isn't everybody involved? Type of thing. So then you feel the need to have everybody involved. But then you go like, oh, but everybody didn't need to be involved. That was kind of a nothing story, type of thing.
Yeah. Like
it's a tricky line. Right?
I think certain characters, they've managed to pull that off with multiple times. Like Daredevil, Spider-Man. Like they'll have these very localized events that like still feel like incredibly personal because something's happening to that character, but it's not like the whole world is, I think the worst that's ever been with Spider-Man for the most part has been like New York.
Yeah.
Is going to, but he's the
Spider
hero.
Island, right?
Yeah, but he's the hero of New York, right? Like, so that kind of, that seems like that should be his maximum radius, I guess, as far as where it's affecting. Like, you shouldn't be reading a Spider-Man comic and going like, oh, thank God that happened. The universe is saved. Like, that should never happen.
Yeah, which is what your complaint with Venom was like, when did Venom become a global
I felt like the
threat?
scope, and that just seems to be Kate's, is he just, which, God bless him, his run on Thor has been pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Is he just goes like, oh, there's the line? Like, I'm going to go so far over the line, you're not even going to see the line behind you.
Exactly.
So, again, it was entertaining.
Yeah. So, going forward, we have Dark Ages just started.
Yep.
Have you heard anything about it? Or?
Nothing.
Okay.
I've tried to stay away from it because I was curious at just like a lot of the promos that came out, and often I'll read a lot of spoilerish crap, and then I'm like, eh. So I just thought, I'm going to leave this one alone. When it comes in, I'm going to read it, and that'll be it. Kind of like what I did with there's another one, Heroes Reborn.
Yeah.
The Reborn series that they just did with the Squadron Supreme. Is it a crossover? Changed the world. Everybody was different. It involved a bunch of different people that weren't necessarily Avengers, but.
We kind of mentioned like Dark Reign was like that, where it's like not a crossover event, but like a theme over the story, and like same with Heroic Age and everything.
Yeah,
I think so. Based on what we've talked about, you kind of have a tier list here of like what's a classic, what's shit. What would you be in your perfect world? Like, what should Marvel do with crossover events moving forward?
A crossover event, like one that I would define as something that I thought would have been a crossover event, or been on this list, like, or any list that you look up, is Infinity.
Yeah.
You had Thanos.
Mm-hmm.
You had the Avengers coming to wreck the place again. Like that's a huge event, and I think for me the defining moment of all those classics is it's a huge event. It involves everybody at an understandable level. Like, it makes sense that they're there.
Yeah.
And then when you come out of it, either the world itself has significantly changed in the direction of kind of the Marvel Universe, or you have multiple characters coming out where now you can spin off into their comics. You can go, okay, where is this going with this guy? Where is she going? What is she doing? That is the defining thing for me as far as like a classic does those things.
Yeah. Like, I think the biggest thing Marvel needs to do is just slow down a little bit.
Yes.
Like you almost had 2 in 2020. Like, just slow down, you know, come up with a crazy idea, build to it, and then just have a crazy bombastic event and then have actual ramifications.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's just one of those things where it's like we said, like, there's some that were good, but like the ramifications were nothing. And it's like, what's the point, right?
Yeah.
And it just, I don't know why they keep, I mean, it's the whole money behind it, right? Of like, people usually buy every single comic that has the word Empire on it. And people, so they feel the need to be completionists. And that's why they're making money. But if you actually want things to be, like, I mean, I'm sure Civil War comics still sell today because it's that classic, right?
Yep.
And it's just one of those things where it's like, you just got to give these guys time to breathe and like actually have things that matter. Because if you call everything a crossover event, then nothing's a crossover event.
Yeah, like in all honesty, at one point when they were doing I thought it was like crazy when they were doing one a year.
Yeah.
Right. And I think when they seemed to have a format at one point where it was like, you'd probably go, I'd say 2 or 3 years before you'd have one that like a Secret Wars.
Yeah.
But in between that, you might have like Spider-Man as a miniseries, like Spider-Verse or something, and you might have a storyline in Hulk or whatever. You might have these smaller things that happened, but the larger ones aren't happening every year.
Yeah,
and that seems to be the case now, as they're just cranking out more and more, and then on top of that, they've got even more of these shorter ones that are like Empire that's just slammed in there as well. It's just like, it's too much.
It's just nothing. Yeah.
It is, to your point, very much a money grab. Mm-hmm. Let's just get people interested. Let's get them going, and then we'll cross it over between everything. We'll slap Empire. We'll slap this on the cover of whatever it is, and people will buy it. And I don't like where it's going, and I wish they would scale back.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah.
And and it's not that, again, we don't hate crossover events. They could be good. It's just,
they've demonstrated. I mean, we got 4 on our list that are just absolute classics. Yeah. We've got three that are like really good reads, and beyond that, like, I mean, there's a couple there that, hey, if you did a couple minor fixes, maybe would have been in the next category above. It's okay.
Yeah.
But you don't need, like, the solve to this is not cranking out more.
Yeah, exactly. That's the exact opposite problem.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are our thoughts on Marvel crossover events. That's our tier list. I will link in the description where you can go make your own tier list, share it with us, let us know if we're wrong or if we're 100% right, which we always are. So yeah, and then we'll see you all next time.
See you later.